And from the top of West Mountain in Scranton, Pennsylvania, good morning, everybody. This is 94.3 FM The Talker. This is Sanity Check, Libertarian Lou, Tea Party Mike, Frank Sorokin's studio. X is be joining us shortly. If you want to join in on the conversation, you want to start your weekend off right, you want to blow off a little steam, this is the number to call, man. 888-577-4487. That number is 888-577-4487. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Lou. You know, it's really funny being down here in Texas. I'm still keeping up with some of the things going on there in Luzerne County, and I found it really funny and interesting that there was some fireworks at the Luzerne County Council meeting and a lot of name-calling, and I found that to be quite interesting that politics really hasn't changed at all, and it doesn't seem like much is getting done at all, Lou. But I did find the articles very interesting through the the Times Leader. And I see that, I'm not quite sure who's acting like Democrats and who's acting like Republicans on that council. But I do see that out of anything, it's quite a show to go see, and I encourage people to go to the next council meeting.
Well, thank you, Michael, and we will be there. A matter of fact, I did get some emails from some of those council members this week and requested our presence this upcoming week. So we will be down there Monday, Tuesday. They have all kinds of different things going on. So, but we will be down there, and we will be. We'll be covering what we always cover.
Muckraking.
Muckraking. And Frank, and there you go. And there's the first softball of the day. There's first softball of the show, Michael. Muckraking. This week,
Lou, I don't mean to interrupt you, but for those who don't know.
Just did.
Well, I know. Okay, so I meant to interrupt you. All right, anyway, while I'm interrupting you, for the folks who don't know, why don't you tell them what muckraking is?
Well, that's where I was getting into. You see that, Michael? That's exactly right. And that's what I was trying to say. Here is that this past week we had the Corbin County edition of the Independent Gazette comes out, and Monday we have the Wilkes-Barre Scranton edition of the Independent Gazette. Will be hitting the streets, and Frank and Michael will also be hitting the boxes that are now on the square and popping up all over the place in intermodal. Certainly, sometime this weekend I'll be dropping some off in Clark Summit.
Mm-hmm. If we've missed your neighborhood, let us know. We will immediately get a box to your neighborhood.
That's right. So anyway, the headlines or what we're in the Independent Gazette is exactly that. Is what is muckraking, because, Michael, we've had a lot of folks, and all of a sudden the name is becoming very popular. It seems like it's popping up all over the place, and I'm going to give the article back to Frank because Frank wants to talk about it, but cover story of the Citizen's Voice. Was this yesterday, Frank, or 2 days ago?
2 days ago.
2 days ago, Michael, it says right in there, it's all just rumors and gossip and muckraking. Of course, this is Citizen's Voice. They don't go ahead and...
That was, for the folks who didn't read the Citizen's Voice, that was our soon-to-be former chief of police, or thief of police, as some would call him, the outgoing Chief Dessoye.
There you go. So, and certainly, Michael, this past week we got quite a bit of credit on Frank's article that he broke in the Independent Gazette about Dessoye leaving. Mm-hmm. And these stories probably would not be out at this point in time, correct?
No, they definitely wouldn't. And I have to give credit to the Times Leader and Citizen's Voice. They both eloquently pointed out that his departure comes just days after the FBI sting where they arrested two city officers, one former, one current police officer, in that whole FBI scandal involving the credit union, the Wilkes-Barre City Employees Federal Credit Union. And
if we were at liberty to say, which we are not, but certainly there's more to come to this story, Michael. So anyway, in helping write this story about muckraking then and now, it was interesting. I just want to stay on that a little bit. I mean, the whole history of what the muckraking is all about, and what muckrakers are, and how that all developed back in the late 1800s, Michael. There was what we call yellow journalism, and certainly Pulitzer and Hearst, who had somewhat successful in the newspaper business. they engaged in what we call yellow journalism, and out of that came what we would call more of the muckraking, the Nellie Bly's, where folks would actually go in, and Mike, she was one of the first ones. She actually went into the insane asylums and started reporting what was going on there. And it really hit its heyday in the early 1900s when you had the Upton Sinclairs and all kinds of different folks writing, and the rise of the magazines where they were really reporting on social change. And the name muckraking was actually coined, or credit was coined to or given to President Theodore Roosevelt when he was actually using it as a little bit of a pejorative. And it was he was talking about the man with the muck rake, okay, and that was part of Pilgrim's Progress, Bunyan, his book. But eventually, what happened was that it was embraced by the American public, and muckraking was off and running. So that's how it started. And Mike, the heyday, like I said, was really in the 1900s. And
so wait a minute.
Go ahead.
I'm a little confused by what
I'm
you
not
just
surprised.
All right,
anytime I talk, I see I confuse folks.
It happens. Anyway, as I'm sitting here confused, so it's not just gossip, rumors, and muckraking?
No. What the whole muckraking thing was, and there were two eras in the 1900s that really hit its peak, late 1960s into the early 70s. And in fact, Michael, Time magazine called 1974, this is something I didn't know, the year of the muckraker. Man, you see, I thought we came up with something really unique here, Michael, but it really had. As luck might have it, there's a lot of great history in what muckraking was all about, but it wasn't all about gossip. But that was one of the things that Teddy Roosevelt was a little concerned about, because the muckrakers, who were on his side for the most part, didn't necessarily, they started doing a little muckraking into his administration. So, of course.
Then it became rumors.
And exactly right. So, but two things changed the muckraking thing, Mike, and I think this is important, and I think it might even go back into, we could look at how corporate entities have shaped what's going on in America today, and certainly you could talk about the pharmaceutical industry. But what happened was they started buying up these magazines, and they wanted to tone down the muckraking. They didn't like the idea that it wasn't good for, necessarily for corporate interests to have this out there. They didn't like the idea that some of these stories that they were writing about were sensational. And then the other thing too, Mike, and I think this is something that we need to make sure that we don't get stuck into, was the election of 1912. And they moved, the muckraking moved from, I guess, about social issues and reporting on social issues, it moved more into political activism. So a number of the muckrakers were supporting Wilson. A number of the muckrakers were supporting Roosevelt. And a number of them even supported the socialist candidate. And can you imagine social candidate on the ballot?
I don't know. We elected Leighton.
So anyway, so that's the beginning of it. But Michael, I think what I want to get you in the conversation here a little bit is that, once again, corporate interest, when we start looking at how that changes what's going on in America today, certainly we have talked about the crony capitalism and the fact that when you no longer need to build a better mousetrap, that all you need to do is get a good congressman or senator in your back pocket, so they make laws to make sure that their competition is squashed. And I think in certain ways we could look at the pharmaceuticals and the big box pharmacies that have come across and what it has done to the hometown pharmacy.
Lou, it's so true. And I just want to, those folks who have never had the opportunity to work around horses, and where's Lacey going with this one? But
yeah,
there's a term that we use when we clean the stalls, and it's called mucking the stalls, which essentially means that we're cleaning up the the poop along the way. And that's really what muckraking to me is, that we're going out into our society and sifting through the crap that's going on within our society and exposing this. And so I just want at least my interpretation of where that term came from. But, as far as getting back to the big corporations, Lou, I think it's something that has to be looked into. In the pharmaceutical industry, Lou, we are saving people money every day by superventing around the pharmaceutical companies, around the big insurance companies, manufacturing, or the term as we spoke before, compounding the products, and saving the people a lot of money and getting a better product for it. But the big industries, the big corporations want to make sure that they keep not just their little piece of the pie, but they want the whole pie, Lou. And how do they do that? Just as you discussed. They find a few senators, a few congressmen that are going to go out and create laws that benefit them and not their competition. And so there is no longer that true free marketplace that we really, as America, have thrived and done well as a country for. And this is not just the pharmaceutical industry. This is so many of the industries today. So really, that's when I think of muckraking, is the type of stories that normally would not get out in papers like the New York Times, papers like Times Leader, unless they're forced to write for it. So this is what encourages me, is that other papers out there are doing similar things, hopefully doing similar things besides us, and be able to get information outside the traditional realm.
And you brought up the New York Times and a few other things here. As I mentioned, in the late 1960s, early 1970s, you had the Ralph Naders and the Seymour Hersh's and the Woodward and Bernstein started coming out. But throughout our whole history, certainly mainstream media has been bought and sold for, not only by corporate interests, but sometimes just for diabolical needs. I mean, the whole Teapot Dome scandal, and I'm not going to get into it, but where the Denver, was it Denver Post or the Denver paper, they were bribed not to report on information. And the reports later on coming out saying everybody was touched by this scandal, and there was so much corruption going on, and that included the press. So that the whole muckraking thing and really has played a history in our.
Just based on Michael's description of mucking out the stalls, I envision a Independent Gazette cartoon coming of...
Well, you got a bunch of them coming.
Of City Hall filled with dirty horse stables, and the Independent Gazette raking out the muck out of City Hall. That's pretty much how it goes, isn't it? I mean, we put Well,
Frank, I even see it a step further. Rather than having the little piles of manure, you've got faces there.
That's pretty much the same thing. You submit a right-to-know request asking, can I have the receipts for X, Y, and Z? And instead of that, they give you a laundry list of crap you never asked for that has absolutely nothing to do with what you're looking for. A friend of mine always says it doesn't matter what you request from City Hall, you are getting Lady Gaga tickets. And that's pretty much how it goes.
So you wanted to talk a little bit more, and you're listening to Sanity. Check the number here is 888-577-4487. You could call about any topic, but certainly we're on muckraking right now, and the need for muckraking, really.
We definitely
I
need
think
it.
We have, a part of the article, Michael, was that it has went in cycles. And at the turn of the century, there was a lot of on the folks' minds was a lot of the corruption and the nepotism, and folks thought that the government itself was overstepping its bounds at the time.
And now you have government officials like our chief of police in Wilkes-Barre using it as a derogatory term.
That's good.
It's just
getting out there.
Just rumors. It's
just rumors.
Muckraking.
Right.
And when they use the term like that, it makes the average person think, well, gee, muckraking is bad. They're just taking rumors and going with it. Well, pretty much everything we've uncovered has been a rumor as it started. A rumor came out that there was something fishy with Lag, and it wasn't until Mark Robbins was told that we find out that Lag was doing something wrong. He was gouging people. He was acting outside the scope of his contract, his official contract with the city, by charging victims of crime. And the chief, of course, doesn't want to talk about the people who came to his office seeking help as victims of crime, who had their car recovered by WBPD and taken to city impound, and then they were charged $1,000 or so to get the car back after they were a victim themselves. So
part of our article, and once again, we encourage folks to pick up the Independent Gazette, read the whole article, not only about muckraking, but we got some other, I think, mind-blowing stories in the newspaper here once again. But Michael, here, catch this. In 1903, one of the articles that was written, see if, and Frank, you too, see if we could swap names. But they were talking about Chicago. And here's one of the clips that we took out, or one of the pieces that we took out to illustrate what the muckrakers were doing in the early part of the century. The police graft, the traffic of authority with criminals, gamblers, prostitutes, liquor dealers, and all sorts of thieves, and some sort of murderers. The evil in Chicago was obvious. And so that's what they were reporting on. So when I just was reading that, Frank, and I was thinking, the police graft, the traffic of authority with criminals, gamblers, and blah blah blah. Well, you start thinking about what's going on today.
Yeah, exactly.
These are the same things that we need to report on. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to bring X on, and let's continue this conversation a little bit more about muckraking. I know you have more things you want to talk about. You listen to Sanity Check 94.3 FM, The Talker.
Class? Then you're looking for Sanity Check Saturday mornings on 94.3 FM, The Talker.
Don't listen to a word I say. The screens all sound the same. For the truth may not be this. Shit will carry on body safe to
Don't
We're
listen.
back.
Don't listen to a word we say.
Don't listen to a word we say.
Even if it's true. Don't listen.
This is Sanity Check 94.3 FM, The Talker, Libertarian Liberty Party Mike. That's it, Michael. Don't listen to a word we say, even if it's true, as Sorek says.
Well, it's very interesting, and that's why I love X, and I know he'll be coming on soon. It's bringing a whole new perspective to things that outside of the Wilkes-Barre Scranton area, and yet even though it gets into bigger areas, really the outcome is the same. It's corrupt government, corrupt leadership, really stealing from the American people, Lou, and that's why we need sources to expose all the lies.
There you go. And on that note, let's bring X on. Good morning, X.
Hey guys, how you doing? The muckraking idea, is really important from the standpoint that an informed public can make informed choices. But one of the things corporations and special interest groups learn at a very early point in time is that if they can control that message, if they can control what people think, if you only think Coke and Pepsi are your only choices, so to speak, a lot of this, let's call it nefarious behavior, can operate within the shadows. And muckraking, kind of uncovers a lot of that.
It sure does, and we're proud of doing what we're doing, and actually we're encouraging folks now become a muckraker.
That's
man.
right.
You could certainly go to our stores. You could go to the Independent Muckraking muckrakerstore.com. You could go to and you could subscribe right there, and we're encouraging folks subscribe to our newspaper. This is how we're growing. This is how we'll continue to be able to do what we're doing and shedding light and dragging the media along with us. X, one of the things that I have been trying to point out as much as possible is that we're not just only keeping an eye on the corruption in government, we're keeping an eye on the media itself. And I think that's as important, and maybe if not more important, than actually keeping an eye. Certainly we have to keep both eyes open because there's enough corruption going around for everybody. But I think that's real important for what we're doing.
Well, the thing that you should take a step back on, and this is really where you start to ask yourself, am I being kept informed? And let's just use this as like a simple test. This past week, they've got all of these revisionist history people out there trying to go back to some speech that George Bush made in 2007 about how if we don't keep troops in Iraq, it's going to fall into chaos. Now, remember, this was 2007, and the troops that we had stayed on an additional 4 years. They didn't pull out till 2011. And what's going on here is, let me just ask everybody, Does everybody know that the Jessica Lynch story was a fake? Does everybody know what happened to Pat Tillman, where he was killed by friendly fire, but the government lied to cover that up? Does everybody know that the toppling of Saddam Hussein's statue that
remember
everybody
that?
watched on television was all staged by American Army PSYOP operations? Now, the question you have to ask yourself is, well, why didn't I hear about that? And the answer is that's what muckraking's about. It's about talking about the things that the establishment, and remember, when you say the establishment, the left and the right, just think about them like Coke and Pepsi. They only want you to think, cola's the choice, even though you're being fed high fructose corn syrup.
Well, talking about the Middle East, and it was something I had written down, maybe touched on today, and you kind of touched on a little bit. So just listening to some of the stuff that's going on, not only in Iraq, but Syria, and one of the questions I have, so Assad was acceptable to the Israelis, he was acceptable to the United States. He treated non-Islamics, the Christians over there, better than any other dictator in the Middle East. So what happened? What twisted it up? And are we getting the right news? Certainly, I like to point out when we did our story on Syria, we went down and interviewed the individuals down in Allentown, and we got a completely different story. So, like this whole dialogue, are we getting the right news? And is the news being reported by the CIA too? Certainly, we talked about Operation Mockingbird. We've talked about that before. Are they planting the stories in the mainstream media? And is the mainstream media just regurgitating the news, which I want you guys to jump in on that, but then I also want to get back into the muckraking thing. Is that what's a little bit different, Michael and X and Frank, that what we're doing here is we're not just regurgitating the news as far as the muckrakers go, and I think that's what separates us from a lot of other publications, that we're actually doing investigative journalism with the resources that we have.
All we're doing is asking simple questions of our elected officials. What did you do with this? Why are you doing it? And how much are we going to wind up paying for it? And that seems to be, and now, that's slander, that's criticism, cyberbullying we've heard out of our chief. Certainly,
and cyberbullying, and that's part of the mainstream, right? The headlines of the newspapers, for goodness sakes, here.
Exactly. If your newspapers are posting online, according to the definition of cyberbullying, they could be charged with cyberbullying. As we're finding out, our chief has consulted a lawyer, and he's going to take action against either the Independent Gazette or the bloggers for cyberbullying. So.
Well, certainly we haven't published anything, and the stuff that we talked about has all come true. So there is absolutely nothing about.
True. It's been true, Lou.
It's been true, right?
We just reported it.
Bring it on, so that we
Right.
could go into courts. That was the other thing.
I can't wait for a lawsuit. I really can't, because
you hear that, Michael? Michael's holding his chest.
I have a slew of subpoenas
you asked
ready to
for.
go.
Michael's holding his chest in Texas, and what's he talking about?
Well, if they file a lawsuit, we immediately fall into discovery. Subpoenas will fly. That's all I can say. And
That'll be
depositions like crazy.
Michael, we're on solid ground here, but the thing is that once again, when we do talk about lawsuits, and like I said, I don't think if Dessoye is talking about that, he's not talking about us, unless he named us for some reason. I don't know why he would.
Said, what was his exact words? His critics, let's see, making claims about Dessoye's lifestyle, and the chief said that are false and defamation.
We've never reported on his lifestyle.
No, we have not. He's consulted a lawyer about cyberbullying.
Good for him. Good for him. So, but at the end of the day, I think what happens with a lot of this stuff, Michael, is first of all, we've been on solid ground, and we've been very careful to report what we reported. And Frank, you have brought this up from day one.
Right.
Nobody has, and I think we've really went the extra mile in.
Where have we ever gotten it wrong? That's my question.
Right.
If we've gotten it wrong, I'm happy to print a retraction.
Absolutely.
But I just want to know, will somebody please, for all the criticism we get out there, I just want to know, Where have we gotten it wrong? Because from where I stand, everything we've ever printed has been proven true. And we've done the research, and they seem to criticize us for protecting our sources. They say, well, they're not naming Joe Blow as their source, so therefore we don't know what Joe really said or if it really was Joe. But ultimately, when you dig a little deeper, you find out that, yes, in fact, it was true what Joe told us.
Mike, that came up in X this week, too, also, is that I was asked to interview a number of folks, and that was exactly what they said to me.
Right.
They said, we know we can trust you.
Because we're not going to out our sources. We've never done that. And we know the culture of corruption we live in. We know the retribution that the elected or establishment will levy on these people. And they threaten them all the time. If you talk to the press, if you say anything or show anything, you're going to be fired. Your mother's brothers, sisters, cousins are all going to be fired.
The whole thing. Yeah. And, Michael, you touched on this a week or two ago, just about the trust factor. And I could tell you right now, I had 2 interviews this week, some mind-blowing stuff. A little bit I'm going to talk about here a little later on our show, Michael. But that was the whole thing is that we know we could trust you guys. And that's real important.
It is very important because anyone with information who thinks that, they are going to go to the press and get this information out there, they're very afraid to, because as we've seen with some of the competitive newspapers, they promise anonymity and then say, we won't out you unless another source does it first.
Right.
And then their sister newspaper in Scranton outs that person's name.
It's the same
and then
newspaper.
The local one,
right.
Then the local one says, well, we could do it too.
The same newspaper under a different name, Michael.
Right.
What, talking about that trust, where you want to weigh in on that one?
Well, we have talked about that, and it's the reason why we're getting stories that other papers. First of all, I think there's twofold thing. One is there's no point going to some of the other papers because they're not going to report on it anyway, Lou. they're in the pocket perhaps of somebody, and they just need to cover this up. So
Michael, I have to stop you there. I was called by, and I'm not going to name who, but I was called by a reporter from another newspaper who wanted to assure me that's not the case, that they have no hidden agenda, that they are simply reporting what they're told to,
Told to report.
Well, no, not told to report. What they're told by the elected officials, and they have no choice. When a press conference is called, you have to report on whatever falls out of the elected official's face at the time. If they then find out that the statements made by the elected official were untrue or misleading, they then report on that as well. So just to clear that up, when an elected official does call a press conference and spins the garbage that falls out of their face, the newspapers will report it.
We're not even. I don't think we're invited to those press
We're
conferences,
not.
Michael. I mean, that's the other thing. And what do we say? Well, it's okay. Don't talk to us. We'll figure it out one way or the other.
We're going to get the truth. Yeah, exactly. It's going to come to us whether you give it to us or Joe gives it to us.
Because according to Leighton and Dessoye and everything, nobody knew anything about this. Leighton had no idea Dessoye was leaving. I mean, come on. Is anybody going to believe this?
Well, that's what Wake Up Wilkes-Barre reported too. Is that he didn't even give a proper 2 weeks notice. By the time Leighton got his resignation that he knew nothing about on Friday.
They don't hang out.
By the next Wednesday, he got the resignation letter. Dessoye's leaving. Only left him with 10 days notice. The poor mayor, what's he going to do?
And after the press conference or talking about Dessoye leaving, what was it, about 20 seconds later, that's when King's College came out. They didn't know anything about that one either.
No, but the position was empty.
Right.
They hadn't made a decision as of today, this minute. No decision made.
Michael, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I guess we'll continue this, but I definitely want to get in on a few other topics. You listen to Sanity Check 94.3 FM The Talker.
94.3 FM The Talker.
So wake me up when it's all over. When I'm wiser and I'm older.
Wake me up, Lou.
All this time I was
I need to be woken up today.
didn't know I was lost. So wake me up.
Nobody knows we're lost. We're walking dark in the woods.
But we're wiser and older. Well, at least older now.
I'm getting older. 94.3 FM The Talker. Libertarian Lou, Tea Party Mike. This is Sanity Check. So anyway, listen, a couple things, Michael. I'll say it, and I'll keep saying it. Nothing changes until we have independent press and free and equal elections. Listen to Bob Butts there, talking about politicians taking campaign contributions from drug companies, talking about ethics. You talk about a guy that's ethical and has been walking the walk and talking the talk for a long period of time. And
putting his money where his mouth is.
And I'm proud to say he's one of our muckrakers for sure. But let's get on these elections a little bit, and I want to talk about the campaign contributions of individuals and some of the stories that have come this way. And certainly, if you become a subscriber to the Independent Gazette, the muckrakers, you will get your PDF ahead of everybody else. You'll have the version. We'll get them out to you Tuesday morning. John, when will we get them out? Probably Monday sometimes, as it's going to print. So you'll be ahead of the curve. You'll be able to talk to your friends and say, I know everything that's coming out in the Independent Gazette.
Advanced edition.
So a couple other things, and why do I keep talking about this?
You like to hear yourself talk?
Yeah. So once again, just this past week, Republicans have challenged libertarians in New York State. In New York, they had to file over, it looks like 30,000 signatures. But Michael, one of the things that, and in Kentucky, this last week we certainly talked about. Republican thugs will stop at nothing to prevent choice on the ballot, where showing up with guns on their hips in Illinois, and it sounds bizarre. It sounds ridiculous, but I think it's important that we know, and we keep reminding folks, this is just not about a Pennsylvania thing. This is once again about being ethical. Bob Butt's ethical. You put your hand on the Bible and you say you're going to swear to uphold the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
I wonder if they've ever read the Constitution.
No, but here, they've read it, and once again, we need, and we're heading into election season here. And are we going to stay with the good old boy system? Are we going to elect folks that are actually going to say, wait a minute, I'm just not going to get along to go along, that, you know what, if this is my party, the party needs to be right. They need to be ethical. And that's one of my big complaints, obviously, with Senator Baker. And maybe she's working behind the scenes, and she's we're more than happy to have her call in and say, wait a minute, I have went to Senator Smucker and said, you're an embarrassment to our party. And I think this is what we need. But once again, we certainly have the good old boy system. Think about a Melanie Madeira that's running here. Is that going to be the fresh face? Is that going to be somebody that's going to stand up? I say yes. Or do you want to go with Sid Michael Kavulich? Is he part of the good old boy system? We're going to look at Betsy Summers and Pyshinsky's.
What has Pyshinsky or Sid Michaels done for you?
Yeah.
Are they supporting laws that will make it easier for anyone to hold office?
And we're not saying change for change. I guess we got change, Michael. You know what kind of change we got here in the past. So it's not just about, I hate using that term, change. We need change, but certainly when you look at our legislature, what have they done?
We need free and equal elections. Do I want Republican candidates to win in an election? Certainly, I'm a Republican. I do. But at the same time, I want the libertarians. I want the independents. I want anybody to be able to have their name on the ballot and to be voted on in a primary, to be voted on in a general election. And I want people to be able to vote for the Betsy Summers or the Melanie Madeira simply because they want Melanie or Betsy to win, not because they walked in and voted Democrat or Republican and walked out. That's ridiculous.
X competition. What do you think?
Hey, well, again, we're back to this thing. The two choices, Coke or Pepsi, and you're still getting high fructose corn syrup, except for the Republicans and Democrats. You're still getting lying, corruption, and cronyism. The thing that stands out, I've been following the Virginia governor's race. Now, we knew that the libertarian Rob Sarvis, who actually ran for governor last time, about a year ago, he got 6.6% of the vote. But he was prevented numerous times from being in a lot of the debates. Now, Rob Sarvis is an attorney. So now Rob Sarvis is running for the Senate in the state of Virginia. So the law groups decided to put on a debate. Well, who do you think they excluded? They excluded an attorney from the debate. And then, of course, they had the debate at the Greenbrier in West Virginia instead of Virginia. But, this is kind of, part and parcel. Like, you would think Mitch McConnell and Grimes are the only people in the Kentucky Senate race. Well, there's a guy, a libertarian by the name of Patterson, that's running, and he's polling at 7%. But if you go to the website like Politico or something and you go and look at the polls, is Patterson's name included? No. Did you know that Lindsey Graham is running against the libertarian Thomas Ravenel from the TV show Southern Charm as a reality star? You wouldn't know that either because they're leaving these people's names off of this discussion. Because once people start to hear, oh, wait a minute, if you're on the stage, then you're actually a candidate. And we ran into that in New Jersey, didn't we, Lou?
We ran it in there. We ran in with the presidential debate commissions. Once again, I just had somebody ask me the other day why, was there third-party debates? Well, there was third-party debates, except that, and we were part of that. I was in studio at Russia Today. That's who covered the third party's debate. Russia Today and Al Jazeera, folks out there. And and this is the problem and why we started. We need an independent Gazette, that we need the independent press. I didn't mean to say Gazette, but we need an independent press. When you own the media, you own the message, and when all this message is being, tied down. Michael, another thing too is that when we look at, same thing even with this whole judiciary. Part of one of the stories that we're writing, Senator Greenleaf. Part of Elliott and Greenleaf, which is going to be part of our story, and I can't get into all the particulars here, but he's the chair of the judiciary. He's collected almost $2 million in campaign contributions. The majority of that comes from legal entities and the Bar Association. So who is he representing? And once again, we're going to need candidates that are going to stand up to the good old boy system. And talking about that, I think we have a candidate that just might be standing up to the good old boy system. Good morning, Melanie Madeira.
Good morning, guys. Thanks for having me on this morning. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. So how's your race going?
Excited. Well, I want to thank you for your kind words. And I know it's not the first time you said it. And I've been meaning to get over to the studio and stop in and talk to you. But I was actually really tired this morning. I've been to, after today, I will be at 8,500 houses.
Yay.
I will hit 10,000 easily by the end of September. So I will be over 10,000 homes by election time. And that's really, really important because of what you're talking about. I can't tell you how many times I'm going to a house, and I have, street lists. I have voter registration lists to know, who the registered voters are in Lackawanna County. And the 114th is basically everything in Lackawanna County around Scranton. It's got, parts of Dixon City now. It's got Carbondale. It's got, Durham and Mayfield and then everything else. So you're from, the Triborough area down here all the way up to the hinterlands where, in the beautiful country up in the north. And so you have a very diverse, political views all over the place. But the thing that carries all the way through the district is that there are many, many registrations. They just mark them as other on the voter registration list that I have. And, and typically you'll see that if they're other, they're registered other, and usually it's libertarian or independent is what they're registered. They don't vote. And the reason they don't vote, not because they don't appreciate the great, privilege that it is to vote. It's because they never feel like they have a candidate to vote for, because it's always, the good old boys network, or they feel like that candidate has been, already backed by, it's Lackawanna County. So, we can understand, what that is all about. So when they meet me, that's why I'm going to so many houses and going to every single registered voter, is that that I'm getting to, because that's really like 45,000 people. But I want them to meet me, and I want them to know, I am not part of that. We had a little situation this week with the good old boys, down here, and it makes me laugh because I say, I'm an Italian. Do you really think that is going to intimidate me? I just, it makes me laugh. But it's, I actually left the Republican Party last year.
I know you
that
did.
was more in response to what I see going on nationally with John Boehner and the destruction of the Constitution, which is very important to me.
And you were part of the Constitution Party, and that's the whole thing.
That's right.
You know, and that's why. Besides all that, Melanie, I just know you from a personal standpoint. I have faith in you, and I know Michael and the folks around here. We have faith in you about that ethical portion. And sometimes I'm going to keep coming back to that and keep coming back to that is that Bob Butts talks about it, and sometimes I'm almost getting to the point where saying I just want somebody that's going to stand up, be ethical, and I know that's you. I mean, I know you're going to speak your mind, and that's what we really need.
That brings me,
Exactly.
Melanie. Real quick, I have a question that came from one of a constituent in Betsy Summers' district, and they asked, and now I want to ask it of you as well, is when you get elected and you're down there in Harrisburg and the establishment comes to you and says you're going to do it this way, what's your response going to be?
First of all, is it constitutional? Does it line up with the Pennsylvania State Constitution, and does it line up with the U.S. Constitution? That always has to be the first thing, because that is the law, and we don't see that in Washington, D.C. It seems like if they do it to the Constitution, according to the Constitution, that's a rarity now. And so that's always the first thing. The second thing I always ask myself, too, and actually it should be first, is it a godly decision? I am a Christian, and I respect the Bible, and I want to make sure, when it comes to being pro-life, is it something that will take away our rights that God has given to us? And so that is first and foremost. And so those are things. But if it has in any way takes away the liberties of the individual, I will not vote for it, because that is why I'm running. I have 6 kids, and I have to look them in the eye every day and say, Mom, this is not the same place you grew up in. What are you going to do about it? And I'm not the kind of person to just sit back and say, oh, well, there's nothing I can do about it. I have 2 feet. I can do this. And I'm going to fight for the same country that they have. And this is what the founding fathers were afraid of, that we would end up with a 2-party system. That actually leads to the destruction of the Constitution. That is what we're seeing.
Well,
and I know you guys talk about that all the time. We have got to remind people, yes, it has to be equal and fair to allow candidates from every party to be a part of the political system.
And just be fair. That's the whole thing.
Yes, and just be fair.
And just
then
be
let
fair.
the voters decide.
Yeah.
Term limits, elections, it should be all in the hands of the voters.
Melanie, you said it, but you know what? And I believe King said it also. We need not do nothing new, just live up to what God has given us on paper, and that can be found in the Declaration of Independence and our Constitution. Melanie, thanks for calling. I got a story I want to talk about, which I think is going to bring a tear to your eye.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
You keep up the good work, and we'll be out there trying to help you in any way we can also.
God bless
All
and
right.
good luck.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Sanity Check 94.3 FM, The Talker.
Think there's bias in the media? Has the political class let you down? Then join Sanity Check as they expose, inform, and enlighten through the new standard in talk radio. Saturday mornings, 94.3 FM, The Talker.
Just know you're not alone, 'cause I'm gonna make this place your home.
This is your home, 94.3 FM, The Talker, Sanity Check, Libertarian Lou, Tea Party Mike. We got X on the line, Frank Stork in studio. Michael, one of the things I want to touch on real quickly is some of the stories that we have coming up, but I tried to tie in Senator Greenleaf, the contributions, almost $2 million in contributions, mostly from the legal entities. Okay, one of the stories that we'll be talking about in the Independent Gazette is about a woman who had a judge assigned to her. The headlines is millionaire to welfare. The woman spent almost $1 million in legal fees. The husband spent almost $5 million in legal fees, is reported. Okay, let's not worry about the money, but it is about the money in a certain case. It's not about what they had. It's why have they stayed in the system so long? And I have a theory on that also. But the judge, we have a judge that was in the family courts. He got out of the family courts, but he kept this particular case. He kept that case for 2 years, okay? And then after that fact, what happened was that he recused himself, and then he continued to write orders after he recused himself, and for every indication he wasn't supposed to do that. Okay, we know all those things, but what I want to bring back is the incestuous relationship that is happening between the judges, the Pennsylvania Judicial Board. So, and how do you redress these things? She complained about it. She says, "Wait a minute, the guy's recused himself." Okay, the guy's recused himself. The judge recused himself, and he's now writing orders after the fact. Okay, and the husband hired the proper attorneys, the heavy hitters and all that stuff, and there certainly seems to be something going wrong. So she filed a complaint to the Judicial Board. All good. Okay, so we know this. So I called the chair of the Judicial Board. He was the chair of the folks that look over these complaints. And I said, listen, I'm going to cut right to the chase. I'm not going to mince words. I'm not going to do the Texas two-step, the three-card Monty. I said, here you go. We were told that you were hired. Your firm was hired by this other individual. And he said, well, what's the judge? Who was the judge? And the guy then I said, the judge's name is Tillman. Oh, Tillman, he says. No, he's a great guy. We went to law school together. And I said, okay, well, that's great. But that, of course, threw a big red flag up to me. And then the second thing was that I asked if would he recuse himself. Of course I would recuse myself. I mean, I never heard of this guy. Lo and behold, he called back a couple hours later from his vacation on the shore and went and told me that, well, yes, he was part of the client base, but he knew nothing about it. Why am I saying this? Why am I bringing this up, Michael and X and Frank? It's because we have to change the judicial system. We don't trust it. Michael, one of those individuals that called us this past week that said they trust us, she wound up, and I can't get into all the particulars only because we're out of time, but she does want to come forward. And here's what happened. They wound up taking her children from her because she was reported by the landlord. You know, Uncle Joe calls Uncle Schmo, who is part of probably the CYS or something, and said, hey, wait a minute, I got some tenants and they're not paying on time and I might have to evict them, so maybe you need to step in. So the long and the short of it is they came, they wound up taking her kids, blah, blah, blah. The individual that I also met helped get those children back. Eventually, she wound up getting those children taken away from her again for a totally bogus reason. I mean, this is bizarre once I get into it a little bit more, but because of time restraints, I have to stop. So meanwhile, she is now in court, and she's pregnant, Michael, and she wants to come forward. And the caseworker said to her, you are too young and have too many children. This was going to be, Melanie Madeira just talked about 6 children. I don't know how many too much is too much children, but this was going to be her 4th child. And she says, Lou, I have to come and tell my story. She says, the caseworker told me flat out, why don't you consider having an abortion? Because you're going to lose that child either way. I'm going to get that child, whether you like it or not. So why don't you just get an abortion? And that's when this woman went off. She says, I don't believe in abortion. That's not right. That's not me. And yet, this is why we need cameras in courtrooms, why we don't trust what's going on. We're going to take a quick call. Let's, Gary. Good morning, Gary.
Good morning, guys. Just to touch on something Melody Madeira just said about for her children. People in this country better start waking up and realizing what these career politicians are doing to our children. Not their children, because their children will be guaranteed cushy jobs for the rest of their lives, for the favors that they did for their rich campaign donors. And what's going on in this country in the destruction of morals, the destruction of our education, the destruction of common sense, and we keep voting for these same people. Mitch McConnell, John Boehner, Harry Harry Reid, Nancy Pelosi, they look and act like cartoon characters, and that's what's leading.
Tell it the way
our
it is,
nation.
Gary.
I mean, and it's a real shame when 80% of this country, I believe it's 90% now, has no faith in Congress, and they elect the same people in primaries that they have no faith in. The same people that have destroyed this country, some of them 20, 30, 40 years, and we vote the same people back in to fix what they have destroyed. I mean, it's insanity. The name of your show, it's insanity. Thanks for your time, guys. Have a
Thanks,
good day.
Gary, thanks for calling in. Michael, we're getting real close, so I'm going to let you. We're not down to it, but that was one of the things you wanted to talk about today, Michael, and we just never got to it. Is what is happening with the kids, and you were going to talk about student debt, and you got about a minute and a half, Michael.
Yeah, we'll make it real quick. And, again, I support my support to Melanie Madeira because she's a real-life person. She knows the struggles of raising families and what it takes to do that today. And one of those things are getting your children educated. I'm looking here in the last 10 years, education's gone up 40, 50%. And this is a cry out to the millennials to step up because they're coming out of school. I know a young man, he's a professional. He gets out of pharmacy school. Lou, he's got a couple $100,000 in debt when he first gets started. He's got some kids and, just recently joined the Army to pick up an extra X amount of dollars so he can try to pay this debt down. And this is what our kids are being left with, Lou, the millennials who want to sit back and really do nothing. They need to get involved in this, whether it's through Independent Gazette, whether it's through running for office themselves, whether it's through getting active within the political system, but they're getting good screwing.
Michael?
And the only thing that's being paid for is the big institution.
You got it, Michael. We're done.
Okay, God bless.
God bless everybody. We'll see you next week.